Hello, Christina. I am so happy that we are able to connect today and talk about the elephant in the room, perfectionism in motherhood, how our kids sometimes start to take on those traits, even though we don't want to see it, you know?
Mm.
I don't know about you, but when I became a mom, I was like, my kids aren't going to get any of my shit. This will be good. I'm gonna do this differently. They're not gonna pick up on all those like nuances and little things that I do. No, they do, and they did. Um, so how about you introduce yourself to the listeners, Christina?
Hello, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you again. My name is Christina Corcoran, and I live in the Midwest in the USA. I'm a mom of two girls, and they're both school age right now, and I do stay home currently. So my world is really revolving around like the motherhood, but I'm also a writer, so I've got that creative side that's still trying to hold on.
Yes, yes. Tell me, tell me about the landscape of your motherhood. We've already talked about that it includes some perfectionism,
hmm
or you see it maybe in other people in your life. So tell me about your motherhood landscape. What does that look like? What does it feel like? What are the beautiful bits? What are the ugly bits that are like part of that?
Well, when you become a mother, you enter this world with baggage, right? And some of it you've unpacked, and some of it's collecting dust. But our kids, they're like these little mirrors, okay? And so eventually you start to see things in them that is, concerning. And it doesn't always hit you that it's sort of sourced from you. Um, because like, especially when they're in pain, they're having a meltdown, their reactions are intense. You're just kind of reacting. I mean, motherhood is all about like putting out fires. You're very busy, you're very tired. And so that's kind of how I came to this topic of perfectionism. It's because I saw my oldest daughter, even as young as 2, just like so hard on herself, just really struggling with things that didn't seem to match the intensity of her frustration, and it didn't matter what I said. I mean, I tried so many things. Growth mindset. I was rewarding her with praising. I was praising her with her process, and tried not to focus on like, oh, that's so pretty and you did such a great job. I was like, oh, I love, how hard you're working at that. And you're being so creative with your choices of colors, and those things were great. But there was still this wall I couldn't break through. And it was so hopeless, really. It was like, I don't know what to do. So, I mean, I was looking for answers and didn't expect to find them in this package of perfectionism. I went to a parent meeting about children who are gifted. And at the time, my child hadn't been tested. There were maybe signs that she was, above average on her milestones. She was still preschool. But I went to this meeting and the woman was presenting about perfectionism and everything just hit. I was checking all of these boxes for her, for me. I brought the information home. My husband, which I had never thought of as having this trait, was like, oh my gosh, that sounds like me. Oh, I'm so hard on myself. And oh yeah, I definitely procrastinate. And so that was like our awakening. And that's where the real work started for all of us.
So tell me about this moment, because I think this is really critical in self-awareness when we are presented with a thing. This like information is coming at you, and not only are you checking off the boxes, in a perfectionist cycle, this could very much turn inwards. This could very much turn into a shame response and be like, I'm never speaking about this to anybody ever. This is so uncomfortable. I cannot tolerate it. I can't even imagine that this has come from me. And now I'm here for my child and I'm checking off all of the boxes for her. Like, how did we get here? I'm just going to like close everything down and never talk about this again. Right? So take me back to this moment in this meeting. Can you remember anything about like the way your body felt or the thoughts that you were having or this awakening as it was unfolding?
I do remember, because you don't get a lot of moments like that in life where something is just profoundly slapping you in the face. Like the evidence is a little hard to deny. So when I'm hearing her speak and I'm thinking of my behaviors and my thoughts and my self-criticism, I had already, so I told you, we come into parenthood with baggage. Well, I had gone through some therapy in my 20s, so pre-marriage, pre-kids, and I did have a little taste of what this felt like when my therapist brought up my father, and I had to work through my codependency issues growing up in a family where there's alcoholism. So I already had that foundation, and I was already a little aware of some of the things that were going on with me. But again, you get so busy as a parent. You really kind of set aside that time. And honestly, even just back when I went to therapy, that, I'm going to date myself, but I mean, we're talking probably about 2005. I mean, this was pre-better health apps on your phone. This was pre-celebrities openly talking about their mental health journeys. So, I had done some work, but I wasn't finished. I mean, are we ever finished, right? But I was moving on and I was doing my life. And so when this moment happened, I thought, okay, I don't like this feeling. I felt that my body kind of clenching. I felt like my skin kind of crawling. I'm getting it again, actually, just about it, because it's uncomfortable. And, the easy thing to do is just be like, I'm doing my best and just kind of push through and keep operating in the same way. But because I was already determined to break that cycle of the alcoholism and the codependency, I felt like, well, this is another cycle. And so I just decided, like, I'm going to look into this. And really, I was still focused on her. I was actually still way more focused on her. How can I help her? What tools are there out there? What things can I do and say? I found some, but eventually I realized within my research, because I started to dig pretty deep, it really had to come from me. I mean, because I'm setting the example. I'm modeling these behaviors and these thoughts and these reactions and the things that I'm saying and the way that my body is responding. They're picking up on that. And, and then, of course, having a spouse who's also got his own similar tendencies, I thought, oh my gosh, like, is she doomed? Like, it felt really overwhelming.
Yes.
But it was a process, and I'm still there. I'm still in that process.
Oh, I'm hearing so much like soft, brutal honesty in your story, right? Like there's like this, I'm seeing it in her, but I know that I'm also built that way. And I also acknowledge that like my partner is built this way. And I think something really key that you said is I was still so focused on her. And that's not wrong, right? Because I have also been there. My child has a sensory processing disorder and ADHD, and we are considering some giftedness. And for a lot of years, I was focused on the tools for him, the tools that he needed. How was I teaching him to navigate his own system, his own things. And that was really valuable. I think as parents, we also got a lot of information from that. And it highlighted a lot of our own things like, well, how would he know to react in that way? For sure, there's some nurture versus nature conversation happening, but it was like, oh no, I feel that way too. It just might not come out of my body in the same way, or I might not talk about it with the same words that he's using to talk about his struggles, but it's very similar. And so we were really heavy on the tools for him, the support for him. And then we kind of reached this limit where he was coming back from some of the therapy or the OT or whatever and saying like, I already know all this stuff. Like they're not teaching me anything that you haven't already taught me. I was like, really good awareness, because he does know it. It's the modeling at home that he needs to see, right? He needs to see, witness feeling the feelings. He needs to witness the words of I'm feeling overwhelmed and I need a minute, or like I'm about to go over the edge and I am feeling like really unsafe in my own body and I need to be able to remove myself, and these are the things that I might do to get back online, right? And for us and for anybody in this place who is potentially having like a shame-based reaction to how you have parented or how your stuff has landed on your kids, please know that their brain development is not entirely locked in until 21. Regardless of what you read online, which is, yes, the first 3 years, the first 6 years are so important, but you can repair across timelines. Like you don't need to be so hard on yourself, which was, indicative of perfectionism.
I love that. I mean, that actually was going through my brain this morning when I was like fixing my hair. I had a moment to myself to kind of reflect on like, what are we going to talk about today? And I thought, you know what? I think something that I needed to hear, and I think your listeners would appreciate, is like, it's not too late.
Mm-hmm.
And it's never too early. So like, I'm thankful that I found this. I'm thankful that I found this, whatever we were going to call it, this trait, and in a good way of modeling a better, healthier coping mechanism. I'll get to that in a minute, but I'm glad that we found it as early as we did. I would like to have said I found it earlier, but I didn't. But what I'd love is to get this information to parents soon, because earlier is better, but it's never too late. And mm-hmm. I look at how far we've all come. Because so my oldest that I kind of based all this on is now 9, and my youngest is 7. And they're 2 very different personalities, some overlapping, and yet, so it's like funny because some of the things that I see in my older one, I go, oh, younger one's got it. She's good. But then there's times where I'm like, oh, wait, she is stressing about that because she doesn't want to disappoint herself or us. So she's putting extra pressure on herself in certain situations. It's just manifesting differently than my other child. Mm-hmm. But there is just such a beautiful kind of evolution that's happening where all of us are catching ourselves. We're all just a little bit better every day at these things. And I mean, gosh, I tell you what, as a perfectionist, here's the thing. You are hard on yourself, right? And so, but you want to do everything perfect. And so to mess up and to yell or to forget that today was late start day, like those things are hard to let go, right? We start to ruminate on them and we compare ourselves to other parents. And we think like, oh, they're all doing it so much easier. And so that has been like such a funny thing, because if I hadn't come to this realization and hadn't started the work, I really can't say I would be happy right now in my parenting role. And I can't say that my kids, because it's like, it's giving me, it's not, I used to hear the phrase, we're all just doing our best. To cringe. I used to be like, don't let me off the hook. Like, I have some beating up to do right here. I got to learn from this. Like, I don't need that. That's for other people, whatever. And honestly, I didn't feel inclined to give that to other people. There was some judgment, like, are they really doing their best? And so, like, by finding self-compassion, which is what I'm really happy to talk about with you today, by finding that, I've actually become more compassionate to other parents, you know, and I do actually find myself using the phrase, we're all just doing our best, and I believe it. Like, I'm like, okay, yeah, we are, you know, we're in this together. It's okay. And it's also, I feel like all this has been coming at a time where we're getting that message more and more. You know, people are being more authentic with the pictures and the videos and the things that they're sharing on social media. And, you know, people are kind of tearing down these walls and saying, like, it's okay. Like, we don't have to get it right every time. And that's just, it's beautiful. And it's hitting at the right time for me, especially. So I'm just glad that this is all kind of connecting.
Yes. And I just want to say that the research across the last, I'm going to say 4 decades, still concludes that as parents, we only have to get it right 30% of the time for our children to be out in the world doing things. Like, we're talking like 30% of the time so that they're not sociopaths, right? Like we're talking 70% of the time we are like messy and we are figuring it out and we are yelling or too critical or too rushed or too anxious. 70% of the time we are allowed to be that. 30% of the time when we get it right, and right for me is defined by parenting from your values, because that's what feels good in your body, right? Right is not, my kid has to be in 5 sports because everybody else's kids are in 5 sports. If that feels right for you, amazing. If that doesn't feel right for you, it's going to come with a whole host of stressors and pressure. And so 30% of the time. And with that little segue into self-compassion, can you tell me some of the practical, actionable ways that shows up in your life, or that you practice it in your life?
Definitely. So one of the things that I found kind of helpful for me to sort of get going with this was sort of the 3 A's of change. So awareness, acceptance, and action. And so luckily my awareness happened, you know, like I said, like when she was about 2, 3, 4, but I didn't know what to do with it. So then I had to accept it, and I had to let go of that blame of like, I created this problem. Like, but then I think, oh, well, wait, but where did it originate? Oh, okay. So I developed it as a coping mechanism, you know, living in a dysfunctional family. And then I also had a father who was an other-oriented perfectionist. So that is someone who maybe their life is kind of a mess, but they're putting these high standards onto those around them. Very judgmental, very critical, nothing's good enough, kind of a pessimistic point of view. And I lived like that. I grew up that way. And honestly, it was starting to be my default, you know? And so first I was aware, then I accepted it. And then I really was like, well, what do I do about it?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that was a weird piece of the puzzle. And when I finally discovered the self-compassion, I was doing some Google scholar research, honestly, and then Kristen Neff is the one who sort of, well, not sort of, but she did
Yes.
define and start all of the research, and it's grown, and it's an amazing tool. It really just pairs perfectly with perfectionism because there's three components of this. And the one, and then you can start at either one of them. I think they all kind of overlap in a way that it doesn't matter what you decide is the first or the second or the third, but self-kindness. So, my inner voice is like super harsh, very critical, very, very judgmental. I make a mistake and I'm like, should have known better, or what was I thinking? Or if I had done this, then that wouldn't have happened, or what are people going to think? I mean, it's just running around doing all the stuff. And so, combating that really it's a mindset. Like your personality traits are built on habits. And so how do you break a habit? I mean, you can't get rid of perfectionism. It's just part of you, but you can kind of find ways to tame it. And so by being self-kind, by treating yourself in these moments as you would treat a friend who's struggling, that was the key for me. That's where I was like, what? Like, I would never tell this other mom, geez, I'm sorry, but like, you're kind of stupid because like the late starts have been going on for 3 months and you just now figured it out. You've been taking your kid. So no, I would never call someone stupid. But like, if I did that, okay, I'm going to be a little more hard on myself. And so that is sort of the nugget. You just got to learn this way, and you have to fight because you've got these old habits. So it's a constant thing. I mean, every day, every moment, it's like, okay, how am I going to react to this? So that's something that I can model for my kids out loud. It's a little like, especially when they're younger, they're really learning so much. I mean, and picture books are great too. Fictional characters can do this for you, but yeah, you're a big source. So, just saying out loud, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that. So you're acknowledging. So, then you move on to this other element where it's like, you don't want to suppress. Okay. You don't want to ignore or deny this frustration or this feeling, because that's just making it bigger. It's growing. Okay. And so it's like, okay, I did this thing. Oh, I don't like this feeling. But kind of, giving yourself a moment, breathing through it and looking forward and saying like, okay, well, you know what? I'm not the only one who's done this. And then that's that third element, common humanity. We tend to get trapped and over-identify with these mistakes and these faults and these flaws and think that we're the only ones. And it's just not true. And so all of these things, like I said, they're just kind of all swirling together. And by practicing this with your kids, it's just so simple sometimes. Like, I'm thinking back even just to breakfast. My youngest one's a little bit clumsy. And so, she spills the milk. I mean, the whole don't cry over spilled milk, right?
Yeah.
But in my old days, I would see that as not so much as like a flaw of hers for being clumsy, but like, now I have this mess to clean up and I don't have time for this mess. And I am just jumping to that reaction. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, again, like, be more careful, move it out of your elbow space. Like, just like coming up with all these, things. And that's not helping at all. Okay. So now she's getting shamed and so like, what have we done? So in those little moments, it's like, it's just whoops. Okay. Yeah. Let's clean that up. And maybe next time, what do you think you could, oh yeah, move it away. And so it's just like, letting them be easy on themselves, but me also being easy on them.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, I'm fighting my urges, and so it's funny because this has been where I have become researcher, teacher, and student all at the same time, right? And so it's going to be imperfect, but it's just these things. And so here's the funny thing. My kids, we stopped using the word perfect. And so now my youngest man, you can't use the word, even though there's times when things are actually like definition wise perfect. No, mom, you can't say perfect. So like, They're getting it. They're slowly getting it, and they'll correct me sometimes. It's beautiful and it's humbling and sometimes embarrassing, but like they will. They'll be like, "Mom, that's okay. I just did a big project. I just sanded down a desk that I found on a curb. Never done this before. I bought some paint, oil-based. I was researching all this. I did all this stuff, and it's beautiful. But the legs of the desk are really rough because I did not sand it down well enough. And so I immediately was like, I felt it when I was moving it into the room. And I'm like, oh no, and they both were like, Mom, it's good enough. Mom, we love it. Mom, it looks great. It doesn't have to be perfect. And I was like, okay, thank you.
Oh, yes. Yes, they are like verbalizing to you, right? Like what your inner child needs to hear, right? That like it's enough, right? Your time or your money or your effort into this project is enough. The effort, just like you said, partway through the episode of like, I was praising them for the effort or the process, right? Is they recognized in this moment that the process for you was part of the experience, and they're highlighting that in this moment that like it's enough. You can still take pride in this project.
Yes. Embrace that. Accept that. I have become happier because I am actually allowing myself to feel good and to feel proud and to acknowledge the work that I do and the accomplishments. And I used to just be focused, on the other. I used to be focused on the negative, on the flaws. And so it's really just, it's redirecting. It's just redirecting, so much redirecting. And like I said, see them mirror that back to me. Oh, like not only are they helping me, but I'm like, oh yay, it's working.
Yes. Again, that like two things are true at the same time, right? Like they are mirroring to me exactly what I need to hear, right? Or exactly the words that are going to counteract that inner critic, that critical voice that sometimes we don't even realize is there because it's just so automatic. It's just so default. And also because they're mirroring it back to you, you know that the things that you have implemented are working or they're making a difference or,
Yeah.
Oh, that's so amazing. Oh, I think we could talk for another half an hour, Christina, about this. And especially because I know that you mentioned that you're writing a book on this. And so the marrying between your own process of the 3 A's and Kristen Neff's 3 ways that you can be compassionate, and the common humanity piece and all of that is so amazing. And I cannot wait until your book comes out. And please make sure that you send me all the links, and I will make sure that they are in the show notes, because this is something that not only I have struggled with. Brené Brown's book changed, like literally changed my life. That was that moment for me. The moment for you in the meeting, the parent meeting, for me was Brené Brown. And I listened to that book on a road trip. I was solo. My kids were at home. And it was like I came back a different person from that trip, just from that book. And so the perfectionism piece in women is glorified, right? It's like we should be striving in this way. We should be good. We should be right. We should be better, because it affects our kids. And we hear that message constantly on social media, right? If you're not a strong leader, your anxiety will trickle down to them, or your perfectionism or your shame or whatever. And so we're kind of taught and socialized to strive for it, to strive for goodness and rightness, and deal with all your demons so that they don't project onto them if you have children. And it's glorified in this way. So I know for a lot of people who are listening, this will feel, or I hope it feels like a breath of fresh air, that just like, let's name the common humanity piece. You are listening right now to 2 people who struggle with a critical inner voice. And it is hard to turn it off sometimes or acknowledge it, befriend it, get to know it. What does it need?
Yes. Yeah.
Like, yeah, I was
Keep
working
your
with
enemies close, right?
yeah, get to know them. I was working with a client actually through Kristen Neff's process. And instead of talking to herself like a friend, we rephrased it to, how would you talk to your child in this exact moment? If they made a mistake, if they, whatever the situation is, how would you respond to your child? Because that, I give my kids so much more grace than I give myself. I'm constantly like, people make mistakes, man. Like, it's okay. Yeah, sure. You were at recess and you got a hole in your pants. Big deal. Like, I give them so much more grace, so much more patience for those mistakes or those missteps or those. It felt really good at the time to punch your brother. Yeah, it did. It felt really good to punch him at that moment. You really wholeheartedly, that was a good choice for you, right? After the fact, not so good. And so,
Right.
let's talk about it, because what's going on? Is it sensory? Is it overwhelmed? Whatever. So the common humanity piece is that you are listening right now to two people who have acknowledged perfectionism as part of the landscape of motherhood, which has all of its own little tentacles and other things as well. That you are not alone. You don't have to go through it alone. And if you are looking for resources, I will name them and link them in the notes. Brene Brown, Kristen Neff, and there's a couple other that are coming to mind that I will link below, along with Christina's To Be Soon book. So thank you, Christina. I really appreciate the conversation today. And I wish you all of the best in your parenting landscape.